I want to say something that might make some of you close this episode in the first 30 seconds. Reading self-help books might be making your life worse. Not because the books are bad, some of them are genuinely brilliant. I have read them, I have recommended them, I quote from them myself. That's not the problem. The problem is what happens in your own nervous system when you consume insight after insight, framework after framework, without ever completing the change the insight was pointing to. Here is what nobody tells you. The more self-help you consume without quantum level change, the more sophisticated your understanding of your own limitations becomes without your actual life changing at all. You don't stay the same, you get worse. You become an expert in your own dysfunction. Stay with me. This is Spiritual Tea. I am Teja Priyadarshini, and today we're talking about the gap between knowing and healing and why that gap is where most of you have been quietly living for years. Welcome back to Spiritual Tea, and I'm so glad to have you here today. If this is your first time with us, this is the show where we take the big, complicated, complex, sometimes fluffy world of spirituality and energy work, and we get real about it. No bypassing, no performance, just the truth about what actually creates change in a human life. And today's truth is an uncomfortable one because it's not about them, it's about a room full of us, myself included, at different points in my life. So let's get into it. I want to tell you about a man I'll call David, not his real name, but a real person. And honestly, a composite of about a dozen people I've sat across from who all have some version of this same story. David has read about 200 self-help books. Guess, 200. Let that number sit for a second, because it's not a small number. That's not a curious dabbler. That's a decade, maybe two, of consistent, devoted study. He could quote from Brené Brown on vulnerability word for word. He could break down Viktor Frankl's logotherapy in a way that would impress a psychology professor. He could tell you the difference between anxious attachment and avoidant attachment before you finished your coffee. He knew his shadow archetypes. He knew his Enneagram number, his human design chart, his cognitive biases, confirmation biases, negative biases, and the whole list. If you gave David a pop quiz on personal development, he would ace it every single time. And his life, the actual lived Tuesday morning texture of his life, was identical to what it had been before he read book number 1. Same relationship pattern, different partner's name, same money anxiety, just with better vocabulary attached to it. Same body that felt tense most days. Same 2 a.m. spiral, except now the spiral came with footnotes. And now, when he couldn't sleep, he didn't just feel afraid. He could narrate why he felt afraid in the language of attachment theory and childhood conditioning. He didn't just have the wound anymore. He had the wound plus a PhD in the wound. And here's the part that broke something open in him. He told me this himself, so I'm not guessing. He said, I realized I had become the most well-read version of stuck that a person could possibly be. That sentence, I still think about that sentence. What changed for David wasn't book 201. It was the moment he closed the books completely for about 4 months. And instead of reading about his, nervous system, he actually sat with it. No new framework to apply, no highlighter. Just him in a chair, breathing, feeling the actual physical sensation underneath the story he'd gotten so good at telling. He described it as terrifying at first, boring then, Then finally, after weeks, something started to move. Not because he understood something new, because he finally experienced something old all the way through, instead of narrating it from a safe intellectual distance. He went inwards instead of outwards, and that's when his life actually started to change shape. So let's name what's actually going on here, because I don't want this just to be a nice story. I wanted to change something for you today. Information is not transformation. Say that with me actually. Say it out loud if you're driving, if you're on a walk, wherever you are. Information is not transformation. Your nervous system does not learn from books. I need you to really receive that, because it goes against almost everything the self-help industry is built on. Your nervous system, the part of you that actually runs your patterns, your triggers, your relationship choices, your money blocks, does not read. It doesn't process paragraphs. It doesn't care how many concepts you can name. Your nervous system learns from experience, and more specifically from completed experience. Here's the metaphor I come back to again and again. Reading about a pool does not teach you to swim. You can read the most detailed, beautifully written book on swimming technique ever published. You can memorize the stroke mechanics, the breathing patterns, the physics of buoyancy. You can quote it back perfectly. And yet, the first time you're actually in deep water, your body will not know how to swim, because swimming is not a concept. It's a completed physical experience, repeated until the nervous system encodes it as safe and known. Healing works exactly the same way. You can understand your abandonment wound with total clarity and still recreate it in every relationship, because understanding it intellectually and metabolizing it somatically are two completely different experiences or processes living in two completely different parts of you. This is why so many deeply self-aware people are still deeply stuck. Self-awareness was never supposed to be the destination. It was supposed to be the map. And so many of us have gotten so good at reading maps that we have forgotten the entire point was to actually go somewhere. Intellectual understanding of your patterns is the consolation prize. It feels productive, it feels like progress, because in a way it is progress. It's just not the finish line progress. It's step 1 of maybe 10. And the self-help industry, as beautiful as parts of it are, makes a lot of its money keeping you very comfortable at step 1 forever with a new book. Let's go a little deeper, because I want you to actually understand the mechanism here, not just feel moved by it for 5 minutes and then forget about it by dinner. There's a concept I use a lot in the healing work I do, and it's this. Your subconscious mind doesn't run on information. It runs on emotionally charged experience, especially experience that got locked in without full completion. Think about how a real trauma or pattern gets installed in the first place. It's rarely because someone explained a concept to you. It's because something happened, an experience, usually with a strong emotional charge, and your nervous system didn't get to fully process and complete it. So it got stored, filed away as unfinished business, sitting underneath your personality, quietly running the show. Now, here's the thing that trips so many spiritually inclined, self-help literate people up. They try to undo an experientially installed pattern using purely intellectual tools. It's like trying to defrost a freezer with a really well-written essay about heat. The essay might be true, it might even be beautiful. It's still not heat. This is why somatic work, why deep hypnosis work, why anything that actually engages the body and the subconscious directly tends to create faster, more permanent shifts than another round of journaling prompts ever could. Not because journaling and books are bad. They're wonderful for building awareness, for giving you language, for helping you recognize the pattern when it's happening. But recognition is not resolution. The pattern needs to be met, not just understood. It needs an experience, often a guided one in a safe container, where the nervous system gets to complete what it never got to complete the first time around. That's what actually closes the loop. That's what actually changes the felt sense of who I am and what's possible for me at the level no amount of reading can touch. So if you are someone who has read your 200 books, if you can quote every framework, if you have done the quizzes, if you know your patterns better than most therapists know their patients, I want you to hear this clearly because I don't want you to feel ashamed by this episode. Shame is not the point. You are not behind. You are not broken. You're not too in your head as some kind of permanent character flaw. You built an incredible map. Genuinely, that's not nothing. Most people don't even have the map. Most people are wandering about blind. You are not blind. You can see the whole terrain. You just haven't walked it yet. And walking it doesn't require another book. It requires putting the book down, at least for a season, and turning that same intelligence that you use to memorize Brené Brown inward, toward actual felt completed experience, toward the body, toward the parts of you that are still quietly waiting to be met rather than analyzed. Here's what I want you to sit with this week. Pick one pattern you understand perfectly on an intellectual level, one you can actually give a TED talk on, and ask yourself honestly, have I ever actually felt all the way through? Or have I just gotten really, really good at describing this emotion or this feeling or this experience? That question alone will tell you exactly where your real work is waiting. If this episode stirred something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Send me a message, tag me, let me know which pattern showed up for you the second I said that. And if you know someone who has a bookshelf full of self-help and a life that hasn't moved in years, someone brilliant, someone who gets it intellectually and is still stuck, send them this episode. Not as a dig, as a door. Next time on Spiritual Tea, we're going somewhere even more uncomfortable. We're talking about spiritual bypassing and why high vibes only might be the most sophisticated form of running away from your life that the wellness world has ever invented. Until then, I'm not asking you to read one more book. I'm asking you to go inward. I'll see you next week.